Hollywood's history is filled with legendary battles. Not on the screen, but at the box office. Some of cinema's greatest films collided on the very same release dates or within weeks of each other, forcing audiences to choose between two giants. These clashes not only decided which movie took home more money, but also revealed which stories would stand the test of time. Jaws 2 vs. Grease, June 16, 1978. In the summer of 1978, Hollywood witnessed one of its most interesting box office clashes when Jaws 2 and Grease premiered on the very same day, June 16th. On paper, the sequel to Spielberg's record-shattering Jaws seemed unbeatable. Universal Pictures poured money into marketing and gave audiences the chilling tagline, "Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water." Fans lined up to see the shark return, and its opening weekend numbers confirmed it as the immediate champion. But across theaters, Paramount released Grease, a colorful musical starring John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Where Jaws 2 relied on thrills and fear, Grease offered joy, romance, and music that was impossible to resist. Though it opened in second place, the film began building steady momentum, helped by its chart-topping soundtrack and nostalgic 1950s setting that connected with families, teenagers, and adults alike. Box office momentum soon told a different story. Jaws 2 had the bigger launch, but it faded quicker, while Grease kept drawing crowds for months. In the end, Jaws 2 earned a very respectable $100 million domestically, but Grease raced ahead to over $130 million, becoming one of the decade's biggest hits. More importantly, Grease became a cultural icon. Its songs still sung today, its style endlessly referenced, and its status cemented as one of the most beloved musicals ever made. The clash between these two films proved that success isn't just about opening weekends. It's about staying power. Jaws 2 had the brand recognition and the spectacle, but Grease had the heart, the fun, and the rewatch value that kept audiences coming back. On June 16, 1978, moviegoers were asked to choose between fear in the water and music under the stars. They chose both, but it was the musical that danced its way into history. The Dark Knight vs. Mamma Mia, July 18, 2008. July 18, 2008 turned into a remarkable day for moviegoers when two completely different films collided at the box office. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight was the dark, highly anticipated continuation of his Batman saga, led by Christian Bale and marked by Heath Ledger's unforgettable performance as the Joker. On its opening weekend, the film exploded into theaters with record-breaking numbers, instantly redefining what audiences expected from superhero cinema. It was intense, ambitious, and critically acclaimed, quickly becoming a cultural landmark and soaring past the billion-dollar mark worldwide. At the same time, Mamma Mia brought an entirely different flavor to audiences. With Meryl Streep at the helm and powered by ABBA's greatest hits, the sunny, romantic musical was pure escapism. Families, women, and fans of the stage show turned out in huge numbers, and while it opened far behind The Dark Knight, its staying power was remarkable. Word of mouth, repeat visits, and the irresistible appeal of its soundtrack kept it playing strongly throughout the summer, ultimately earning more than $600 million worldwide and claiming the crown as the biggest musical of its era. Though vastly different in tone and target audience, both films succeeded in extraordinary ways. The Dark Knight dominated with spectacle and darkness, while Mamma Mia thrived on joy and nostalgia. Their simultaneous release remains a rare case where two films, competing head-to-head, both walked away as box office legends. 3. Gone with the Wind vs. The Wizard of Oz, 1939. 1939 is often remembered as Hollywood's greatest year, and no clash better illustrates that than the pairing of Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. Though both came from the same studio, MGM, their releases just months apart created one of cinema's most fascinating rivalries. Gone with the Wind was the towering epic, a 4-hour Civil War romance that promised grandeur on a scale never seen before. With its sweeping Technicolor visuals, massive publicity campaign, and star power in Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, it became the event film of the year. Audiences flocked to see it, and the movie shattered box office records, ultimately becoming the highest-grossing film of all time when adjusted for inflation, a title it still holds to this day. On the other hand, The Wizard of Oz offered something entirely different. An imaginative musical fantasy filled with wonder, magic, and unforgettable songs like Over the Rainbow. While it didn't initially match the financial juggernaut of Gone with the Wind, its artistry and universal themes captured the hearts of children and families, laying the groundwork for a cultural legacy that would grow stronger over decades. Television re-releases and home video turned it into one of the most beloved films ever made, transcending generations. In the end, Gone with the Wind won the box office crown of 1939 and became a global phenomenon, while The Wizard of Oz became the timeless classic that arguably left the deeper cultural footprint. Their clash is remembered not as a battle with one loser, but as a defining moment when Hollywood delivered two masterpieces within the same remarkable year. 4. Ben-Hur vs. Sleeping Beauty, 1959. In 1959, audiences were presented with two films that could not have been more different, yet both aimed to dazzle on the grandest scale. MGM's Ben-Hur and Disney's Sleeping Beauty. Ben-Hur, directed by William Wyler and starring Charlton Heston, was the studio's most ambitious gamble. An epic biblical tale running over 3 hours, featuring breathtaking sets, a cast of thousands, and the now legendary chariot race sequence. The production was among the most expensive ever attempted, but the gamble paid off. Upon release, Ben-Hur became a box office sensation, grossing over $70 million domestically and later earning a record-shattering 11 Academy Awards. It was Hollywood spectacle at its most commanding, and it revitalized MGM at a time when the studio desperately needed a hit. Meanwhile, Disney unveiled Sleeping Beauty, its most lavish animated feature up to that time. The film was a visual marvel, painstakingly crafted over nearly a decade with stylized backgrounds and Technorama 70 widescreen presentation. It was intended to be Disney's crown jewel, yet its reception fell short of expectations. Though admired for its artistry, it struggled to compete with the juggernaut of Ben-Hur and failed to generate the box office needed to cover its enormous production cost. In fact, its underperformance led Disney to avoid fairy tale films for decades, only returning to the genre in the late 1980s. In the immediate clash, Ben-Hur emerged the unquestionable victor, celebrated as one of cinema's greatest epics. Yet time has been kinder to Sleeping Beauty, which eventually became a beloved classic through reissues and home video, proving that while Ben-Hur conquered the box office, Disney's fairy tale carved out its own lasting legacy. 5. Mary Poppins vs. Goldfinger, 1964. 1964 was a golden year for cinema, and two of its brightest jewels collided at the box office. Disney's Mary Poppins and the James Bond adventure Goldfinger. Both were released just months apart and targeted mass audiences, yet their approaches could not have been more different. Mary Poppins was Walt Disney's crowning achievement in live-action filmmaking, blending whimsical fantasy with groundbreaking special effects and unforgettable songs. Starring Julie Andrews in her Oscar-winning debut, it enchanted children and adults alike, quickly becoming one of Disney's biggest hits of the decade. Families returned to see it again and again, and its soundtrack turned into a cultural phenomenon with classics like A Spoonful of Sugar and Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Goldfinger, meanwhile, represented the Bond franchise at the height of its 1960s power. Sean Connery's third outing as 007 perfected the formula: gadgets, villains, Bond girls, and that iconic Aston Martin DB5. With its sleek action and Cold War coolness, the film captured the imagination of audiences worldwide and solidified James Bond as one of the most bankable franchises in history. At the box office, Goldfinger outpaced nearly every spy thriller of its time, drawing massive adult audiences while Disney cornered the family market. Both films became runaway successes, but their clash highlighted Hollywood's ability to serve different demographics simultaneously. Mary Poppins ultimately outgrossed Goldfinger in the United States and won 5 Academy Awards, while Goldfinger became the most popular Bond film of its era and an international smash. The true winners were moviegoers, who in the span of a few months were given two films that would endure as classics in entirely different genres. 6. Rocky IV vs. Clue, 1985. Thanksgiving weekend of 1985 brought a fascinating clash when two wildly different films hit theaters on the same day. Sylvester Stallone's Rocky IV, and the ensemble comedy Clue. Rocky IV was the fourth entry in Stallone's beloved boxing saga, this time pitting the underdog Italian stallion against Ivan Drago, a towering Soviet fighter played by Dolph Lundgren. Released at the height of Cold War tensions, the film struck a patriotic chord with American audiences. Its training montages, explosive fights, and Stallone's sheer star power made it an instant sensation. Opening to massive crowds, it went on to become the highest-grossing sports film of all time up to that point, earning over $300 million worldwide and solidifying Rocky as a cultural icon of the 1980s. On the same day, Paramount released Clue, a darkly comedic murder mystery inspired by the popular board game. Directed by Jonathan Lynn and featuring a stellar cast including Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, and Christopher Lloyd, the film offered a unique gimmick. Different theaters received alternate endings, leaving audiences with multiple possible solutions to the mystery. While the concept was clever, Clue struggled to find its footing at the box office, overshadowed by Stallone's Blockbuster. Audiences that weekend overwhelmingly chose the patriotic triumph of Rocky over the quirky humor of a whodunit. In the immediate clash, Rocky IV was the undisputed champion, delivering box office glory and becoming a defining film of the decade. Yet in the long run, Clue earned redemption as a cult classic, beloved for its sharp dialogue and campy energy. The clash of November 1985 proved that while one film dominated financially, the other would slowly build a legacy of its own through loyal fans and endless rewatchability. 7. Back to the Future vs. Rambo. First Blood Part 2, 1985. The summer of 1985 gave audiences two of the decade's most defining blockbusters. And though they didn't open on the exact same day, they collided at the box office all summer long. Back to the Future and Rambo. First Blood Part 2. Stallone's Rambo sequel was released first in May, and it immediately tapped into Cold War patriotism, sending its muscle-bound hero back to Vietnam to rescue American POWs. With explosive action sequences and Stallone at his peak, it became a global sensation, pulling in nearly $300 million worldwide and dominating the early summer box office. But in July, Universal unleashed Back to the Future, a sci-fi comedy adventure produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Robert Zemeckis. Starring Michael J. Fox as the time-traveling teenager Marty McFly and Christopher Lloyd as the eccentric Doc Brown. The film combined humor, heart, and high-concept storytelling in a way that appealed to every demographic. It debuted strong and, unlike many action-heavy blockbusters, demonstrated remarkable staying power. Week after week, it remained near the top of the charts, eventually surpassing Rambo and finishing as the highest-grossing film of 1985, with over $380 million worldwide. The box office battle between these two films represented a clash of styles: raw action spectacle versus family-friendly adventure. In the end, Rambo, First Blood Part 2 was a phenomenon in its own right and cemented Stallone's place as an action superstar. But Back to the Future became a timeless classic, spawning two sequels and embedding itself permanently into pop culture. Their competition made 1985 one of the most exciting summers in Hollywood history. 8. Titanic vs. Tomorrow Never Dies, 1997. December 19, 1997, became one of the most legendary box office clashes in Hollywood history when two massive films released on the same day: James Cameron's Titanic and the James Bond adventure Tomorrow Never Dies. On paper, Bond looked like the safe bet. The franchise was one of the most reliable in cinema, and Pierce Brosnan's second outing as 007 promised action, gadgets, and global espionage. With a production budget of around $110 million, Tomorrow Never Dies opened strong, delivering the kind of slick thrills audiences expected and grossing over $330 million worldwide. But Cameron's Titanic was the real story. With a then-record budget of $200 million, it was seen as a massive gamble that many predicted would sink at the box office. Instead, it became a cultural phenomenon, mixing a sweeping romance between Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet with jaw-dropping disaster spectacle. Titanic captured the hearts of audiences everywhere. Unlike most blockbusters that peak quickly, Titanic grew stronger each week, dominating theaters for months. By the time its run was over, It had grossed more than $1.8 billion worldwide, smashing records and becoming the highest-grossing film of all time until Avatar overtook it in 2009. In the direct clash, Bond held his ground as a hit, but he couldn't compete with the juggernaut of Titanic. The film not only destroyed its box office competition but also swept the 1998 Academy Awards, winning 11 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. The December 1997 showdown remains a classic example of how one film can defy every expectation and redefine the industry, while the other, though successful, fades into the shadow of cinematic history. 9. The Matrix vs. 10 Things I Hate About You, 1999. March 31, 1999, saw two films premiere on the very same day, but their destinies couldn't have been more different. Warner Brothers released The Matrix, an ambitious sci-fi action thriller from the Wachowskis, while Touchstone Pictures unveiled 10 Things I Hate About You, a teen romantic comedy loosely inspired by Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. The Matrix was a revelation. Starring Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, and Carrie-Anne Moss, it blended cyberpunk philosophy, martial arts, and groundbreaking special effects that introduced the world to bullet time. Audiences and critics alike were stunned by its originality. What might have been dismissed as niche sci-fi instead exploded into a global phenomenon, grossing more than $460 million worldwide. It didn't just succeed commercially. It transformed the visual language of action cinema and became one of the most influential films of the modern era. On the same day, 10 Things I Hate About You offered something entirely different. Starring Julia Stiles and a breakout Heath Ledger, the film delivered sharp wit, teenage charm, and a romantic edge that appealed strongly to high school and college audiences. Though it could never compete with The Matrix in sheer box office dominance, it quietly made its mark, earning a solid $53 million against a modest budget and becoming a beloved staple of teen cinema. The Clash of March 1999 demonstrated Hollywood's diversity. One film revolutionized action and technology, while the other carved out a long-lasting place in pop culture through heart and humor. The Matrix emerged as the titan, but 10 Things I Hate About You found immortality in its own way, especially as Heath Ledger's career blossomed. Both films proved that cinematic impact can come in very different forms. 10. King Kong, 1933, versus The Invisible Man, 1933. 1933 gave audiences two unforgettable classics that collided in very different ways. RKO's King Kong and Universal's The Invisible Man. Released in March, King Kong stunned Depression-era audiences with its mix of adventure, romance, and groundbreaking stop-motion effects by Willis O'Brien. The image of the giant ape atop the Empire State Building became an instant cultural icon. Against all odds, it was a box office triumph, grossing nearly $2 million and pulling RKO back from financial collapse. Later that year, in November, Universal unveiled James Whale's The Invisible Man featuring Claude Rains in his debut. The film told the chilling tale of a scientist whose discovery of invisibility drives him into madness. Its special effects, which made Rains seem to vanish before viewers' eyes, were revolutionary for the time. The film became another success for Universal, strengthening its dominance in the horror genre alongside Dracula and Frankenstein. In their clash, King Kong roared loudest, commanding larger audiences and cultural impact. Yet The Invisible Man carved its own place as one of horror's most inventive films. Together, they proved that 1933 was a milestone year, with both spectacle and psychological thrills reshaping what Hollywood could offer. From monster epics to superhero sagas, these box office battles show that cinema has never been short of competition. Sometimes the winner is obvious, other times both films go on to become classics in their own right. In the end, these clashes remind us that no matter who wins, audiences are always the real victors, because they get unforgettable films to enjoy for generations.